Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today I will be releasing my final predictions for the 2024 Copa America. I gave you guys my earliest thoughts as soon as the groups were released, and now with the tournament right around the corner, it's time to give you guys my very final thoughts. Squad updates as well. A lot of the more well-known players from these countries actually will be missing this tournament. I just released my Euro 2024 predictions as well. In case you missed that, I'll leave a link in the description below. And I'll do my best to cover this tournament as the summer goes on. It will be a bit difficult to balance this along with the Euros, and I'll be honest, I will be prioritizing the Euros. If I do have time to talk about Copa America though, of course I will. I'll be doing my best to release prediction videos as the tournament goes on. Regardless, an incredible summer ahead with 2 major international tournaments, so make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay tuned for more content. Leave an early like. Let's try to hit 3,000 likes on this video, and let's get into it. Starting off with Group A, we have Argentina, Chile, Peru, and Canada. Argentina are without a doubt the favorites of this group, and for many, the tournament as well. As they won the last edition, they just won the World Cup. I would say that amongst all the national teams in this tournament, they have the least pressure on their shoulders after all they have done in recent times, with Messi finally lifting some international silverware. Don't get me wrong, they will still be taking this tournament very seriously. I just don't think they will be as eager and maybe fully motivated compared to the last Copa America and the last World Cup. I would argue that the likes of Brazil are going to be more motivated to come back in this tournament, as they have not been living up to their expectations. We'll get into them later, obviously, but yeah, Argentina is still without a doubt the best squad on paper in this group. One of the best players in the world, Messi, still doing bits for Inter Miami. Di Maria has had some very solid and clutch moments for Benfica, and he did announce that this will be his last tournament for Argentina. McAllister has been a great addition to the national team in their recent tournaments, and also has been a solid signing for Liverpool. Great defenders, a goalkeeper, Martinez, with a lot of heart and determination for this nation. Truly a hero for the national team in the World Cup final, along with the Copa America as well. Very clutch moments in the last tournament. No disrespect to the other nations, whether or not Argentina will be fully motivated to win the entire tournament, they are without a doubt, I think, going to be the ones to top this group. Maybe they will fall short to one of these nations, but I do think they will climb to the top by the end. Now, Chile are an interesting case, as when this tournament was drawn, they were looking to be in very poor form. They've only picked up 1 win in the World Cup qualifiers so far against Peru, who are also in this group and are at last place in the World Cup qualifiers. Following that victory, they lost to Venezuela 3-0 and couldn't pick up a win since, which resulted in them getting a new manager, Gareca. And since his arrival, it's looked promising. Their last 2 friendlies were against Albania and France, 3-0 victory against Albania, 3-2 loss against France. Scoring 2 goals against what's considered the best national team in Europe according to the FIFA rankings is very impressive. Despite losing, obviously, Chile are looking to be a lot more clinical in front of goal. And 2 players that scored against France that are looking to be very promising are Nunez and Osorio. Of course, there are still some veterans on this team that should be guiding their sides to more victories, like Alexis Sanchez, obviously past his prime, but he has done so much for the Chilean national team. Up top, you've also got the man who's actually from England, Brereton Diaz. And I'd say if they're tactically sound, they have a solid defensive line to work with. Maripan on Monaco being the biggest name, but also watch out for Paulo Diaz, who's been great for both club and country. Chile look to be in decent shape going into this tournament. Nothing's necessarily certain, it's still early stages with the new revival, but can we say the same for Peru? Like I mentioned earlier, they are currently rock bottom of the World Cup qualifiers, but they did win their last 2 friendlies scheduled against Nicaragua and Dominican Republic. Was that really good test though? I think Chile did have tougher opponents to prepare. The veteran Paulo Guerrero has been selected for the squad, but he is currently injured with an unknown return date. If we do see him play at the tournament though at an efficient level, we could see him become the all-time top goal scorer of the Copa America, and I believe Messi is in the race as well. Just like Chile, Peru also decided to revamp their managerial role, as they signed the Uruguayan Jorge Fossati, who did manage those 2 friendly matches. And of course, this national team have some underrated gems that can click well together. And last but not least, Canada, our 3rd national team we're looking at, which have also appointed a new manager, Jesse Marsch. But at the time of this recording, we have not seen him manage any matches for Canada. Previously coaching the likes of Leeds and RB Leipzig, unfortunately failed with that Leeds project, and he's got some great names to his disposal. Jonathan David has scored loads of goals in Ligue 1. Their best player, Alphonso Davies, who plays a very versatile role for the national team. It'll be interesting to see where Marsch places him. Other underrated players including Alistair Johnson, Estacio, Tejan Buchanan. This will be the only debutant in the Copa America tournament, so it'll be really interesting to see how they do. And to be honest, I think they definitely have a solid shout. I think they didn't necessarily get a favorable draw, but one where they definitely have what it takes to prove themselves. I think if they were in the last group, Group D, for example, it would be a much tougher task. Argentina will be too much of a tough task, so yeah, I'm sticking with Argentina first. I think Chile will continue to improve their form and finish second. Peru just fall short to third, but put off a good display. Canada crashed to fourth. Now, Copa America is very tough to call, I think, potentially even tougher than the Euros. But this is the order I'm going to stick with. Canada, maybe they could very much disappoint like they did in the World Cup, getting 3 for 3 losses. Maybe that will translate here. And it's too tough to say, like I said, because Marsh only just signed for the Canada national team. Let's move on to Group B now, which is a lot tougher to predict, I think. Any of these sides have the opportunity to grab first place. We have Mexico, Jamaica, Ecuador, and Venezuela. Now, one common theme for this group is a lot of key players from each of these countries will be missing. Mexico, I guess, are just simply moving forward. They decided to not select their veteran Ochoa in goal. Instead, they're bringing in Malagun from Copa America, who a lot of fans believe in. But then there's some other key players in the attack being left out, including Chucky Lozano. For Ecuador's case, their fullback Estupiñán, who plays in the Premier League, is ruled out for injury. And then for Jamaica, they will be missing Leon Bailey, their best player in the attack. As he's had a feud with the national team ever since he broke curfew back in November, they punished him and suspended him for a bit, and he's just decided to not return, making comments such as he doesn't need the national team to excel in his career. They also left out some other players, including Pinnock, so this Jamaica squad on paper is looking a lot weaker than what they could be throwing out into this tournament. They'll probably be relying on the likes of Gray as well, who did pick up an injury and has an unknown return date. But they also have the Corva Reed from Fulham, Antonio. Jamaica definitely has what it takes to still fight in this tournament without a doubt, and I think this is a favorable group, all things considered. All these teams should be happy to be in this group because it's going to be a very level playing field, but I think Jamaica will be finishing 4th place here. Yes, they just got 3rd place in the CONCACAF Nations League, beating Panama. Were able to narrowly pass through against Canada, but the last time they played Mexico in the CONCACAF Gold Cup final, they lost 3-0. That was a year ago, but still, their squad is looking much weaker since that tournament with those players missing, so I'm sorry, Jamaica. 4th place for me. Now for Mexico's case, yes, they did just win the CONCACAF Gold Cup, but other than that, they have seemed to be on a slight decline compared to before, mainly because they keep losing to the United States every time they face them. Too many matches they look shaky, conceding goals. We saw, for example, in the CONCACAF Nations League quarterfinals, they had a comeback against Honduras, winning on penalties there. Sometimes they show the attacking threat, but then the defense seems to blunder. Great attacking options, of course. Santiago Jimenez doing absolute bits in the Eredivisie. Has his form translated so well to the national team, though? He's only scored 4 goals for Mexico so far, but that can very much change in this tournament. So Mexico clearly are trying to move forward with some progression, but are they still leaving out some of the more experienced players? It's a bold approach, and we'll see if Lozano's ideas end up paying off. Because the other 2 South American teams in this group, yes, are not those giant sides like Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, etc., but these are 2 sides that I think have very much proved their worth lately. Ecuador, despite missing Estupiñán, still have a lot of great defenders in the back line. Young, energetic players themselves that have been proving their worth. The likes of Hincapié and Pacho, 2 informed players in the Bundesliga. Moises Caicedo has been criticized for his Chelsea performances, not living up to that price tag per se, but for the Ecuador national team, he turns into another player. He knows his role and is the glue for the national team. When he plays well, most of the time the rest of the national team does as well. Ecuador's only loss so far in the World Cup qualifiers was to Argentina 1-0. We've also seen them impressively defeat Uruguay, who many people have been praising their form. They sit just behind Venezuela in the World Cup qualifier table, but they did get a 3-point deduction. But many people were not expecting Venezuela to be so high in the table as of now. They have been playing some of their best football recently. This is the only side from CONMEBOL to never qualify for the World Cup in their history, and they might be on track to make it to North America. Their only loss so far in the qualifiers was recently to Colombia, which finished in a 1-0 defeat, and Colombia are on a 20-match unbeaten streak. They drew with Brazil away, which gave them a massive confidence boost, as after that they defeated Chile 3-0. The likes of Soteldo have been electric in the qualified campaign, and one player who has been excelling at club level as well is Yangel Herrera. When he wasn't suffering through injury, he definitely showed his role. Despite all their recent success, I think most people are still going to be sleeping on this Venezuelan national team. I'm really tempted to give them a top 2 position in this group, and I really could see it going down to the wire, 2nd and 3rd being separated by the finest of margins. Ecuador first. Mexico only just pushed through for 2nd, potentially sharing points with Venezuela, who finished 3rd. and like I said, Jamaica 4th. Really, again, will not be surprised if I'm wrong, and best of luck to every single one of these teams. This is, without a doubt, the toughest group to call in Copa America, I'd say. I want to believe in Venezuela. I think they 100% have what it takes, but something just tells me Mexico will have a bit of luck on their side to very narrowly advance. Moving on to Group C with Uruguay, the United States, Panama, and Bolivia. Now, this could obviously age terribly, but in my opinion, this group is a lot easier to call than Group B. I think there are two heavy favorites to advance, but of course this is football and you shouldn't rule out any of these teams. Of course we could see a surprise, but I'm going to start off with my last place pick, Bolivia. According to the current FIFA rankings, this is the worst nation in CONMEBOL. Most of the time Bolivia finished group stage in Copa America's history. The last time that they didn't was in 2015 where they advanced to the quarterfinals. But prior to that, the last time they advanced to the knockouts was in 1997 when they were the hosts. And they were runners-up, to be fair. But also they were champions in 1963 when they were the hosts. And there's a huge reason why they did well in their own home ground with their altitude advantage. They beat Peru recently in the World Cup qualifiers, but I've already talked about how Peru have been in bad form. In March, they beat Andorra in a friendly 1-0. Besides that match, their last win was all the way back in March 2023 against Saudi Arabia. I feel bad for this nation, of course. They're always having to be tested against all these other South American teams. If they were in a different confederation, of course, they could probably get more wins. So maybe they can prove their worth against the CONCACAF teams in this group, but the United States right now is the best CONCACAF team, and Panama have been in solid form themselves, not to mention they did play Panama back in August where Panama did get a victory. Panama's rise recently has actually been quite impressive. I think they're one of the CONCACAF sides that are not talked about enough. They just made it all the way to the CONCACAF Gold Cup final where they lost to Mexico, and were scoring loads of goals in the CONCACAF Nations League, especially against Costa Rica. 3 against them in both legs. But then they crumbled to Mexico and Jamaica. They did beat the United States in the CONCACAF Gold Cup, but the United States were not playing the strongest lineup. They'll definitely be bringing in more of their big name players for this tournament. Regardless, on their day, this is the underrated team that gel well together. Maria, who has been amazing for Marseille this year, they still have some other decent options in the back line. I think this side have what it takes to get third place, but I think second or first might be too much of a stretch. As like I said earlier, the United States at the moment is the best team in CONCACAF. On paper, and of course, the results are speaking for themselves. Besides not doing well in the CONCACAF Gold Cup, where like I mentioned, they didn't take their strongest lineup, they have been winning a lot of silverware. Captain America Christian Pulisic has had an incredible first year at AC Milan. I'm hoping Tillman is more implemented in that starting 11 as he had a phenomenal season with PSV. Some other attackers have been a bit more quiet this season, including Weah and Reina, but for the national team they still show their stance. Very solid midfield unit with the likes of McKennie and Musa. McKennie really has revived his form at Juventus this year. My only concern for the United States, and I made this no secret in my World Cup predictions as well, is the manager Berhalter. I mean, after the World Cup, there was a lot of stuff going behind the scenes with him and the rest of the team, particularly Reina. Him and the national team parted ways, but instead of finding a replacement, they ended up bringing him back. And look, within CONCACAF, he does the job, of course, but something tells me the United States can excel even further if they had somebody else in charge. This group without a doubt should be doable for the United States, and I could see them being a proper underdog in this tournament if they had better management, I'd say. So against Uruguay, I think it'll be too tough for Berhalter, so I'm putting the USA at second place, Uruguay first. Uruguay under Bielsa are looking revolutionized, and this national team have a lot of incredible history, of course. Their last Copa America win was in 2011, so they're very much going to want to prove their stats here. It's going to be tricky now with their attack looking very different without Suarez and Cavani. They're going to be relying on Darwin Núñez, who yes, has been critiqued so much this year for his inconsistency. But last time he was playing for the national team, he was in some serious hot form that bit of the season, getting at least 1 goal in the last 4 matches. So Bielsa seems to know how to utilize him well. But of course, they won't only be relying on him. They've got a Champions League winner there, Valverde, probably their best player at the moment. Other great midfielders like Ugarte, Bentancur, and an incredible defensive line with Araujo and Jimenez. A lot of people are saying that this side have what it takes to become Copa America champions. Without a doubt, they're on the right track. Only 1 loss in the World Cup qualifiers so far. So I'm going to say that Uruguay have what it takes to get first place. Maybe the USA can surprise and take it there, but without a doubt, these will be my top 2 national teams, which will advance to the knockouts. And finally, Group D with Brazil, Colombia, Costa Rica, and Paraguay. Again, a group where I think there are 2 favorites, but of course anything's possible. Costa Rica, I think, are in an unfortunate situation as this side have already proven to have a lot of heart and determination to prove people wrong when they are doubted. Take a look at the 2014 World Cup. For example, group of death, and they topped it. But now they will be missing their most well-known player in between the sticks, Keylor Navas, as he has announced international retirement moments before this tournament begins. I think that's personally a huge loss, as he's really shown his quality over the years. He was also a massive reason why Costa Rica did so well in that 2014 campaign. Of course, that was 10 years ago now, but still, throughout all these years, he has proven to be a top quality goalkeeper. Of course, there's still many other interesting names there. Many eyes will be on their striker Ugalde, who currently plays for Spartak Moscow. But will he be able to handle defenses like Brazil, Colombia, even Paraguay? Too many matches where we see them concede loads of goals. Like I already mentioned, they conceded 3 to Canada twice consecutively over both legs. In the CONCACAF Gold Cup, we saw them concede 4 to Martinique. Of course, they scored 6, but still. And even in the last World Cup, yes, they got a win against Japan and made the group interesting, but against those giant teams, they conceded 7 to Spain and 4 to Germany. And with them not having their veteran in between the sticks, I think Costa Rica will suffer in this group. I'm putting them at 4th place. If any team will surprise in this group, I think it could be Paraguay, but it's not going to be easy for them either. Currently in the World Cup qualifiers, they sit at 7th with only 1 win. They've been keeping so many matches narrow and low scoring, but they are lacking a goal scoring threat at the moment. In fact, all of their World Cup qualifier matches saw a 1-0 or a 0-0 scoreline. Their only victory being against Bolivia 1-0, and that was the only goal they managed to score so far. So the manager Garnero clearly has some defensive idea. Will it pay off? I think they could keep it narrow once again against the likes of Brazil, potentially Colombia. We've even seen them play Colombia recently in the World Cup qualifiers where it finished 1-0. But at the end, it's not going to pay off, so I am going to put them at 3rd. Maybe the likes of Almiron and Ciso can step up their form, but with these current tactics, I think it will be too tricky for Paraguay against the likes of Colombia and Brazil. Brazil have not been in their best form either, of course. They are shockingly only 6th in the World Cup qualifiers with 2 wins, as they're currently cycling through managers after Chichi's exit. Now they have Dorival Jr., who was appointed in January, and judging off of his 2 friendlies, it's been quite an improvement, as they played some tough teams there. Still lots of talking points in this team with loads of players missing, including Neymar, Ederson. Alisson has thankfully just made a return. Casemiro was not selected to the squad, but even without Neymar, that attack is deadly. I mean, Endrick made his stance for the Brazil national team in the last series of friendlies that I just talked about against Spain and England. Vinicius Jr. had such an incredible year. Many people are saying he deserves the Ballon d'Or. 11 goals in 10 matches of the Champions League, and 21 goals in La Liga this season. Can't forget about his Real Madrid teammate Rodrigo, Martinelli, Lucas Paqueta, Guimarães, Militao just returning for this tournament at the perfect time, as he's been injured all season. I could go on and on about the quality of this national team. That's something they never seem to fail in. Even with some missing key players, they are still without a doubt one of the favorites of the tournament. But they're still looking to improve their form and identity, as they are one of the best football nations in the world. And it's going to be a tough task against Colombia, as I mentioned earlier, they are on a 20-match unbeaten streak. They took not qualifying for the World Cup personally and have been on an absolute roll since. They're beating some top national teams on the race as well. They played a friendly against Spain where they won 1-0, even beating Brazil back in November. They're the only team so far in CONMEBOL World Cup qualifiers to have 0 losses. But of course, that could easily end here against a top team like Brazil, who have appointed a new manager since they last faced them, as we've also seen other teams going into tournaments undefeated, and that streak being broken very early in the tournament, even against teams you wouldn't expect to defeat them. What a squad though. I'm hoping Lucho performs very well in this tournament, accompanied with the likes of Sinistera in the attack, Jefferson Lerma in the midfield. Munoz at fullback for Crystal Palace has been excellent this season, and I definitely think it's going to be a close affair between them and Brazil to secure that 1st place spot. I said in my early predictions that Colombia could get 1st place with their incredible form, and back then Brazil were looking a lot more shaky. But what I see potentially this time around is both of these sides finishing the group stage undefeated, meaning obviously both these sides draw against one another, and Brazil just happen to score more goals against the other teams in this group, so they get 1st place, Colombia gets 2nd. Alright, so here's what the bracket would look like if all my predictions come true. As you can see, on one side we have Argentina versus Mexico and Ecuador versus Chile. On the other, Brazil versus USA and Colombia versus Uruguay. Starting out with Argentina versus Mexico. Sorry, Mexico. I think this is definitely where you crumble. Argentina are just too strong. We've already seen this side also defeat them in the group stage of World Cup 2022. Argentina, for me, remain as one of the favorites of the tournament. Moving on to Ecuador versus Chile. Definitely a tough one to call. As I mentioned previously, Chile's form has been improving, but it's just still not enough of a solid foundation to necessarily be 100% convinced that they can continue to excel in this tournament. Without a doubt, I think this match is a flip of a coin, but I'm going to go for Ecuador to advance where they face Argentina in the semis. Next up, Uruguay versus Colombia. A lot of people are banking on both of these sides to have a very good Copa America run. So if they face each other this early, it's unfortunate for both, as really anything can happen here. Both have really been improving their form. Things can definitely change once the tournament actually progresses and we see how both of these sides play in the group stage. But for now, Colombia seemed to play very, very convincing football, being able to handle top national teams. I think this one could be narrow going to penalties where Uruguay just falls short. Colombia advanced to the semifinals. And who will face them, Brazil or the United States? Sorry, USA. I just don't see a chance. No, the quality Brazil have, it would be ridiculous to rule them out here. That would be one hell of an upset if the United States could push through to the semifinals against one of the favorites of Copa America. But yeah, I'm saying all the CONCACAF teams are eliminated by the semifinals of the tournament as Brazil take on Colombia once again in the semifinals. But before I look at that matchup, let's announce who will probably win against Argentina or Ecuador. Head-to-head, Argentina absolutely destroy Ecuador as they've got 23 wins against them while Ecuador only have 5. And these sides also faced in the last Copa America in the quarterfinal stage where Argentina grabbed a 3-0 victory. I am without a doubt favoring Argentina to make it to the Copa America final once again. But of course, best of luck to Ecuador. Now for Brazil versus Colombia, the rematch from the group stage. Like I said there, I could see it finishing in a draw. How will it play out the next time they face one another? Brazil, without a doubt, the favorites on paper, but the football Colombia have been playing cannot be ignored. Most people are going to be favoring Brazil in this matchup, but I'm going to go for, I guess, what some would consider an upset and say Colombia advance to the final. I know the popular pick is to see Argentina and Brazil face one another in the final because that's what we saw last time around, but I don't see a repeat of the final. And I could see Brazil showing improvements in this tournament, but still in some areas showing some inconsistency. Of course, in the last 2 Copa Americas, Brazil have been on fire. Champions and then runners-up, but prior to that, it was a group stage exit. I also feel like I haven't gone for too many quote-unquote upsets in this video, so this will be mine in the knockouts. If you even want to call one, as Colombia are an excellent side. I'm saying they face Argentina in the final. And there, it's really tricky, but I'm going to say if Colombia continue to have that unbeaten streak, it ends here. Argentina defeat them in the final to win their 2nd consecutive Copa America. This all could age so terribly as in the Copa America in the past, we have seen some shocking progressions from some minnows. Maybe we'll see a CONCACAF team do much better than the round of 16. But the way it's set up for them right now, I think the South American teams will mostly show dominance, and we will see a back-to-back Copa America champion. Best of luck to all these teams though, especially the underdogs, and let me know obviously what you would change in the comments below with your predictions. Let me know what you want to see next on the channel regarding Euros or Copa America, and don't forget to check out my Euro prediction video. Anyway, thank you all for making it to the end. I will see you all very, very soon. Take care. La cu noite.